Through this video, I will be discussing how to use effective punishment while also providing advice for parents. First off, I'm going to discuss types of punishment. Keep in mind that punishment doesn't necessarily mean something bad, but the decrease in the strength of behavior due to its consequences. Positive punishment is when something is being added or given as a consequence of your behavior, while negative punishment is when something is taken away, causing the behavior to be less likely to be repeated. Again, punishment doesn't necessarily refer to the outcome, but the effect that the outcome has, aka whether you're more or less likely to repeat the future behavior. It's only punishment if the behavior is reduced or suppressed in the future. Now I'd like to give a few pieces of advice for parents when attempting to administer successful punishment. First, my piece of advice is to deliver the punishment right after the child commits the incorrect behavior. The idea of contiguity is extremely important when it comes to whether a punishment is effective or not. For the punishment to be most effective, it should be delivered immediately. The longer the time delay, the less effective the punishment will be, even if there is only a small period in between. For example, a study by Abramowitz and O'Leary looked at the effectiveness of immediate and delayed reprimands of off-task behavior for first and second graders. Students were either reprimanded immediately after the off-task behavior or 2 minutes after. Punishment was seen to be more effective for reprimands that were immediate, while delayed reprimands were practically useless. This could be because the students performed other behaviors during the delay interval, and those behaviors could be suppressed instead of the intended behavior. My next piece of advice is to make sure that suppression is due to contingency. Contingency is the degree to which the punishment is dependent on the specific behavior. It measures how likely it is that a behavior will lead to punishing consequences and show that a more probable consequence is more effective. The delivery of a punisher as a consequence contingent of behavior is much more effective than randomly delivering consequences no matter what. If a child doesn't get dessert every time they fail to finish their dinner, this would be an example of a clear contingency between eating dinner and getting dessert. If the child only gets dessert sometimes, even though they finish their dinner, then there is no contingency here. Next, my advice to parents would be to make sure that the punishment is more intense than the next in regard to the same behavior. This is called punisher intensity. According to Skinner, punishers only temporarily disrupt behavior, but they don't necessarily produce lasting suppression of behavior. He might have believed this because he tended to use very mild stimuli, while more intense punishers are seen to get more intense punishment. Although it is very common to start with a weak punisher and gradually give a larger one, this is an ineffective way to suppress behavior. If you start with a weak punishment, the child will also receive more punishers overall. The problem with starting with a weak punishment is that individuals may build up a tolerance when starting with a mild punishment. This is called immunizing. For example, let's say children were playing together, but one child keeps taking the other's toys. On the onset, the teacher may make the student sit on the side of the class, but the next time, the student may not be allowed to go to recess. This could be ineffective because the student may continue to act up if they know that they will able to still go to recess, although if all the student has to do is sit on the side, the behavior taking away the toys may not be suppressed. It is important to note that too intense of punishments do exist, which may induce anxiety or fear. If a punishment is too intense, it could lead to general suppression. My last piece of advice is to make sure that the punishment is specific. Suppression of punished behavior has to be specific of that behavior. For example, let's say a child is scribbling on the wall with a magic marker before you get home. You get home and see that there's marker all over the wall and you go to punish the child. It must be apparent that the scolding or possible spanking is specific to scribbling on the wall and nothing else. If the child doesn't know what they're being punished for, the likelihood of suppressing the behavior of drawing on the wall won't necessarily get across. The punishment for scribbling will only be effective if the scolding or spanking actually weaken the likelihood that the child will continue to draw on the wall in the future.